"I'm sorry, Liam," she said without meeting my eyes, "but I can't marry someone who still drives a 10-year-old truck." She had no idea that same truck was parked outside a house with my name, and only my name, on the deed. My name is Liam Prescott. I'm 36 years old, contractor, born and raised in Lexington, Kentucky. I build homes for a living, foundation to finish. Nothing fancy, but solid work. The kind of work that keeps your hands cracked, your back sore, and your clients happy. For the past 14 years, I've run Prescott Builds, a small firm with 6 guys I trust like brothers. Most days, I'm the first to show up on site and the last to leave. I met Jenna at the county fair. She was wearing boots 2 sizes too clean for the rodeo, sipping lemonade like she belonged to another world. Corporate world, marketing exec. Downtown office, smooth hands. But she laughed at my jokes, asked about drywall like she cared, and before I knew it, I was skipping poker nights just to hear her talk about ad campaigns I barely understood. For 2 years, we made it work. I cooked dinner, she brought home overpriced candles, we argued about paint colors and laughed in grocery store aisles. She didn't like the smell of sawdust in my clothes, but she said it reminded her that I built things, that I was steady, at ease. At least that's what I thought. 6 months ago, we got engaged. Nothing over the top. Just me, a ring, and the back porch she said she loved. She cried. Said she'd never been so sure about anything. We started planning a spring wedding. I gave her access to my bank account for convenience. Told her she could do whatever she wanted with the decor. I'd handle the venue. What I didn't know is that whatever she wanted included meetings with a guy named Brent, her coworker, at a little wine bar across town. Or that while I was wiring money for a custom barn venue, she was scouting condos with walk-in closets and rooftop views, without me. But back then, I was all in. I wasn't some clueless boyfriend ignoring red flags. I just trusted her. Maybe too much. She'd tease me about my old Ford F-150, said it rattled too much, that it smelled like lumber. But that truck hauled every piece of the house we lived in, my house. The same house I bought 10 years ago, fixed up with my own hands and paid off last fall. She never asked whose name was on the deed. I never offered. I figured love didn't keep score. Turns out, I should have. Prescott Builds wasn't some overnight success. It started with a rusted-out toolbox, a borrowed ladder, and a Craigslist ad that read, "Honest work, fair price." My first job was patching drywall in Mrs. Carter's laundry room. She paid me in cash and banana bread. From there, word spread. Like it does in small towns, quietly but powerfully. I didn't spend on billboards. I earned reputation. For a long time, it was just me. Me, a truck with no air conditioning, and a notebook full of penciled sketches. I missed birthdays, skipped weekends, and worked through more than one Christmas Eve to meet deadlines. While my friends were out drinking or chasing promotions, I was crawling under houses and learning plumbing codes. I wasn't building an empire. I was building trust. One porch, one roof, one handshake at a time. When I finally hired help, Kenny, then Rob, then Marcus, I told them the same thing every time. We don't cut corners. Not on homes, not on people. That's been my motto ever since, and it stuck. Even our clients repeated it back to us. By the time I met Jenna, I had 7 full builds under my belt and 2 more on the books. My name was known at the local lumberyard. The real estate agents started referring me, and I'd finally gotten a real office. Okay, it was a trailer next to the site, but it had Wi-Fi and a fridge. It was mine. But none of that seemed impressive to Jenna's circle. They'd ask me at dinner parties, "So you're like a handyman?" And I'd smile and say, "Something like that." Her friends wore smartwatches and complained about boardroom politics. I had calluses and truck stop coffee. Different worlds. Still, I thought we'd figured out a balance. Looking back, the signs were subtle. She started leaving brochures around the house for minimalist condos, talked about how tiring the drive from the middle of nowhere was. I shrugged it off. After all, I built the kind of life I thought people wanted. Stable, honest, real. I didn't realize she wanted something curated, something filtered, something shinier. It started small. Most things do. Jenna stopped asking how my day was, not in a dramatic way, just little skips in conversation. At first I thought she was tired. Work stress, maybe. But then she began replying to texts with just a thumbs up. No more drive safe or bring milk. Just silence, or worse, indifference. Our dinner conversations, once full of stories and planning, became quieter. She'd pick at her salad, scrolling on her phone like she was waiting on something or someone. One night, I asked if something was wrong. She smiled and said, "You're imagining things, babe." But her eyes didn't match her voice. Then came the nights she worked late. Marketing campaign launches, she said. Q4 is brutal. I believed her, until I saw 2 wine glasses in the dishwasher when I got home early from a site check. She said her sister stopped by. I didn't push it. I wasn't raised to snoop. I was raised to trust. That's my flaw, maybe. I trust too, deep for too long. Her friends stopped inviting me to things. Engagement party dinners got rescheduled. I was too blue-collar for them anyway. The new crowd wore fitted suits and smelled like cologne I couldn't pronounce. They looked at me like I was the valet. Jenna said I was being sensitive. She started calling my house our place, but only when she needed something fixed. The rest of the time she called it this old thing. She said it like a punchline, like it embarrassed her. Then one afternoon, I came home and found a binder on the kitchen table. Wedding vendor lists, floor plans, even color palettes. Except my name wasn't on most of the notes. Just initials, J and B. I paused. B. I flipped through the pages like a man searching for proof of something he doesn't want to find. I asked her about it later. She laughed, said it was a typo, a planner's placeholder. Don't be silly, Liam. But after that, I started noticing things disappearing. The framed picture from our engagement, gone. The his and hers mugs she'd ordered, just hers now. Her drawer in the bedroom was empty one morning, like it had been packed in the dark, and yet every morning she kissed my cheek. Like nothing was unraveling. Then, exactly 3 weeks before our wedding day, she walked into the living room, looked me dead in the eyes, and said she needed time to reassess things. I just nodded. I didn't beg. I didn't argue. I wasn't about to fight someone who'd already left me long before she walked out the door. She packed her suitcase, grabbed her phone, and left. But what she didn't take was the house. And that's where she made her first mistake. The first few days after she left were quiet. Too quiet. No texts. No calls. Just her side of the closet hanging empty and a faint smell of that citrus perfume she always wore. I didn't chase her. I didn't even touch her things. I just sat on the porch each night, sipping black coffee from the mug that still said Mr. and Mrs. Funny thing is, I never stopped calling it my house. Because it was. I knew the paperwork inside. Out. Title. Deed. Mortgage, if you could still call it that, since I'd paid it off last November. I built that house from the studs up. Every screw in that frame had my name on it. Jenna never asked about ownership. She assumed, I guess. Thought love meant shared everything. Thought living there gave her some claim. She was wrong. A week later, I got a text from my buddy Connor, works downtown at the title office. Hey, just saw something weird. Someone tried to pull equity from your place. Jenna's name isn't on anything, but her signature showed up. I didn't reply. Just stared at the screen for a long time. The audacity. That's when something inside me shifted. I didn't get mad. Not the yelling, punching the wall kind of mad. It was colder. Focused. Like laying out tools for a long job. I drove down to the county office and pulled every document I'd ever signed. Clean. All mine. Then I paid a visit to a friend of mine, Evan, real estate lawyer, likes bourbon more than courtrooms. I handed him a manila folder and said, I just want to make sure nobody sells something that doesn't belong to them. He raised an eyebrow. Trouble? Not yet, I said, but it's coming. Meanwhile, Jenna was on Instagram living, Like nothing happened. Brunch with friends, a spa day, a photo of her on a rooftop bar with a guy whose watch cost more than my truck. Brent. I recognized him from her work event, the one I wasn't invited to, the one she said was just a networking thing. Cute. People started whispering around town. Small towns always do. I kept quiet, let them talk, let them wonder why I hadn't thrown her stuff in the yard or posted some dramatic rant. I wasn't interested in putting on a show. I was building something else. A plan. I changed the locks. Transferred utilities back under my name alone. Set up 2 motion-detecting cameras around the perimeter, subtle but sharp. I rerouted mail, cleared her name off every bill, and filed a notice with the county clerk. No property transfers without my notarized approval. She didn't know I'd done any of that, until the second rejection letter hit her inbox. Application. Denied. Applicant lacks legal claim to property. That same day, she called me for the first time since leaving. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was all sugar and regret. Hey Liam, can we talk? Sure, Jenna, but not in the way you're expecting. The voicemail sat there for 3 days, unopened. I didn't need to hear excuses wrapped in nostalgia. Jenna had made her move. Now it was my turn to play the long game. But fate, funny how it works, had other plans. That Friday, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost let it ring out, but something made me swipe. Liam Prescott? The voice asked, polished, direct. This is Meredith Langston. I'm with Pinebrook Development. Now that name I recognized, big firm, out of state. They just bought up 3 lots outside Lexington and we're looking for local talent. Real talent. We've heard about your work, she said. A few of our architects have driven by your residential builds. That gray farmhouse on Claremont. That's yours? I nodded. From the dirt up. There was a pause. We'd like to talk. We're assembling a regional team for a long-term project. No subcontractor status. You'd be on board as lead builder. I didn't speak for a moment. She continued. We offer relocation bonuses, full ownership of your brand, and, if you're willing, a shot at designing something with your name on the sign. I looked around my living room. The same one Jenna had once called outdated. The same room I'd renovated by hand, board by board, and now a national firm wanted me not just to build, but to lead. I told her I'd need to think, but in truth, my mind was already moving. That night I poured a glass of bourbon and opened my old sketchbook, the one with my original designs from back when I was dreaming small. I flipped to a page I hadn't touched in years, a blueprint for a modern farmhouse community. It had been just an idea, until now. The next day I met Meredith at a diner off I-75. No suit, no briefcase. Just me and a copy of my full portfolio in a leather binder Jenna once called embarrassing. I laid it on the table and said, You want something real? Let's build it. She smiled like she'd been waiting to hear that. While the contract was being drafted, something strange happened. Jenna showed up at my job site. I was reviewing drywall work when I saw her car pull up. She stepped out wearing heels that didn't belong on gravel. Her eyes scanned the unfinished frame, then settled on me. I didn't expect to find you here, she said. I didn't answer, just waited. I heard about Pinebrook, she added, brushing imaginary dust off her sleeve. That's huge, I nodded. She took a step closer. Look, I've been thinking. Maybe we rushed things. Maybe we just needed space. Space, huh? I glanced at the crew behind me, guys who had stuck around when things got ugly. Then back at her. I'm not angry, Jenna, I said, calm as ever. I'm just done. The next day, she tried to re-enter the house using her old key. It didn't fit. Then came the text. Why would you change the locks? We were supposed to talk. No, Jenna. You were supposed to marry me. Instead, you walked away from something solid, and now I was being offered something better than what we ever had. A chance to build something of my own, with people who saw value in me before the fancy titles. A week later, the paperwork was signed. Prescott Builds became Prescott Development Group. My first contract with Pinebrook, a 14-home custom community. My designs. My rules. On the day I signed the deal, I got one last message from Jenna. I made a mistake. I didn't reply. Sometimes silence is the best blueprint for closure. I hadn't heard from Jenna in weeks, after I changed the locks and stopped replying. To her messages, she tried to reach out through mutual friends, said I was overreacting, said she was confused. But what she really meant was, she didn't expect the door to close for good, not until the papers were served. See, while I was working on foundation layouts and supplier contracts. With Pinebrook, Evan, my attorney, was finalizing everything behind the scenes. Legal notice that she had no financial or residential claim. An official order denying her request to reverse the utilities transfer. And a cease and desist letter after she tried to pose as my fiancé at a bank meeting for a refinance I never signed off on. Yeah, that happened. Apparently she'd tried to salvage some credit leverage by listing herself as co-owner of the home. Problem is, my name was the only one on the title, always had been, and once the bank got my notarized affidavit, everything she'd touched unraveled. That's when her perfect little illusion started to fall apart. I found out through an old friend. Jenna was let go from her job. Official reason, misuse of internal communications and breach of conduct. Unofficially, she used company systems to email Brent's wife. Yep, turns out Brent wasn't as single as he let on. That rooftop romance? It came with a side of divorce filings. Her apartment lease fell through. The friends who used to flood her comments with heart emojis? Ghosted. She posted a teary-eyed selfie one night with a caption that said, "Some people aren't who they claim to be." The irony nearly knocked me off my chair. She even tried calling my mother. My mother left a voicemail saying she wanted to make peace and that she hoped we could find our way back. Mom forwarded it to me without a word, just added, "You deserve better. Always have." Meanwhile, I was busy. The first model home for the Claremont project broke ground. My team doubled. Meredith called twice a week just to ask if I needed anything. For the first time in years, I was working not just to build for others, but to build my vision. I kept everything clean. No social media jabs, no passive-aggressive posts, just silence. But that's the thing. Silence speaks. When you go from being someone's foundation to their phantom, it unsettles them. They expect noise, drama, closure. But when all they hear is progress, that's what really haunts them. A few weeks later, I got a manila envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside, a letter. Handwritten, from Jenna. It wasn't angry, wasn't cruel. It was full of what-ifs and I'm sorries, and I thought I knew what I wanted. She said she'd driven by the site, said it looked beautiful, said I looked different. She was right. I was different. Not because I'd changed, but because I'd stopped trying to prove my worth to people who never understood it to begin with. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the final piece clicked. I was in my truck, parked outside the lumberyard reviewing invoices when a message popped up on my phone. Unknown number, just a screenshot. An email chain. It took me a second to register the names. Jenna Harper, Brent Donovan, and someone named Sasha M. Legal counsel, Lexington Real Estate Group. I scrolled. My chest tightened. The emails went back 3 months, weeks before she left. Subject line, timeline for asset repositioning. Asset. That's what I was. What the house was. What she saw when I handed her a key and said, "Welcome home." The messages were blunt, cold, not even pretending to be romantic. If he signs the prenup, we can proceed post-wedding. If not, we push for cohabitation claim. We can't delay the closing on that unit. He's dragging his feet. Brent, can you speed this up? Reminder, legal gray area in common law claims if she's been listed as resident for 12 plus months. Let's use that. I sat there, completely still. It wasn't a broken engagement, it was a strategy, a play. Brent wasn't just the rebound or the coworker. He was part of the setup. He knew. They'd both known. From the moment Jenna moved in, she had a plan: get tied to the asset, use the relationship to validate financial claims, and extract equity if things didn't go her way. But she miscalculated. She thought I'd be too trusting, too blind, too in love. She didn't know that my father taught me to never sign a damn thing unless you know who benefits when it burns. And she never expected that Evan, my lawyer, was already compiling digital forensics, that he'd find the IP addresses those emails came from, that he'd connect Sasha M. to a real estate firm previously flagged in 2 asset targeting investigations across the state. 2 other men had filed complaints. Both were tradesmen. Both had been engaged to women connected to Sasha's client network. Same pattern, same setup, different names. This wasn't heartbreak. This was a damn blueprint. We handed everything over to the authorities, quietly. No headlines. No courtroom drama, yet. But the pressure was mounting. 1 week later, Brent's firm placed him on administrative leave. 2 weeks after that, Sasha M. lost her license, pending a full ethics review. And Jenna? She was subpoenaed. She tried to deny it all at first. Claimed she never saw the emails, that Brent must have acted on his own. But digital footprints don't lie. Metadata doesn't lie. People do. I didn't attend the hearing. Didn't need to. Evan called me after and said, "She broke, threw him under the bus." Of course she did. When the heat's on, the ones who burn you never stand beside you. They Just run. She filed a written statement, begged to avoid criminal charges, claimed she'd been manipulated, played, misled. Maybe she had. Maybe. But she also played me. Slept in my bed, ate at my table, called herself my future, while making backup plans with a lawyer who referred to me as the opportunity. She wasn't confused. She was calculating. And the worst part? If I hadn't changed the locks, if I hadn't trusted my gut, I would have walked into that wedding with open arms and a blindfold and signed everything away. But I didn't. Because something in me shifted the day she left. Not just pain. Not just survival. It was the clarity that comes when you realize the person you loved wasn't real. But you still are. And that's more powerful than any plan they had. After the dust settled, I didn't celebrate. There was no champagne, no I told you so victory lap. That's not how I'm wired. Besides, what I gained wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about finally doing things right, for me. Prescott Development Group was up and running by spring. We opened a small but sharp office space in an old brick building off Claremont Street. Nothing flashy. Just clean lines, high beams, and the smell of fresh-cut pine. I didn't need marble floors or a receptionist with a headset. I needed people I could trust, and I had them. Kenny came back on full-time, and this time he brought his younger brother, Ethan, a quiet kid who worked like he had something to prove. Rob handled site logistics like a general. Marcus, he ran numbers tighter than any software ever could. We weren't just building houses anymore. We were building a system. We changed how we handled materials, sourcing locally, negotiating directly with mills. I hired a retired inspector, Mr. Calhoun, to consult on every design before a single shovel hit the ground. Quality in the quiet details, I'd tell the team. And they got it. The first build was a 3-bedroom ranch with wraparound windows and a porch made for bourbon nights and baby monitors. It sold within a week. Young couple, first home. When I handed them the keys, I said the same thing I always do. This house won't change your life, but if we did our job right, it'll hold everything that does. Word spread fast. We didn't advertise. Didn't have to. The same people who used to brush me off at charity auctions now asked if I had time to fit them in. The same realtors who once called me small scale started offering exclusivity contracts. Even a guy from the bank, the one who once entertained Jenna's refinance, showed up at our ribbon cutting. He shook my hand and said, "Didn't know you were the owner." "Most people don't," I replied. I didn't just rebuild the company, I rebuilt my name, my reputation, my voice. And the funny thing? Once I stopped trying to be what Jenna and her world wanted me to be, the right people started showing up on their own. One of them was Elena. She was the project lead on Pinebrook's next build. Architect, liked her coffee black and her contracts. Precise. She never asked about my past, just paid attention to the work, the details, the way I talked to my crew. We didn't date, not right away. It wasn't about rushing into something new. It was about respecting what we were both building, individually. But there was a look she gave me one day on site. Dust in the air, sun cutting through framing beams, and I knew we'd talk again. Not everything had to be dramatic to be real, and that was the greatest lesson of all. I didn't need a spotlight, or a ceremony, or a filtered life curated for social media. I just needed space to build something honest, solid, durable, the way I always had. It was the end of July when the call came in. I was on site, walking a couple through cabinet finishes, when Meredith from Pinebrook called and asked if I had time for a lunch downtown. Her voice sounded different, measured, almost cautious. We met at a quiet place near the courthouse, the kind of spot with real silverware and tablecloths that make you sit up straighter. She didn't waste time. "Liam," she said, "we want you to lead the full regional integration." I blinked. "You mean the next build?" "No," she replied. "I mean the whole operation." Turns out Pinebrook had been watching, not just my builds, but my process, my leadership, my consistency, the way my team moved as a unit. They were planning to expand beyond Kentucky, and they didn't want another polished exec with empty buzzwords. They wanted someone real, someone proven, someone like me. "We're offering full decision authority," she said. "Budget approvals, hiring power, design autonomy. You set the standards. You run the show." For a long second I didn't say anything, because 5 months earlier, I was the guy sitting on a porch wondering what the hell went wrong, and now they were offering me everything I used to dream about, plus a few things I'd never dared to ask for. But I wasn't the same man anymore. So I leaned back, looked Meredith in the eye, and said, "Only on one condition." She raised an eyebrow. "Which is?" "We don't cut corners. Not for speed, not for profit, not for optics." I told her I'd rather walk away than sell garbage wrapped in granite countertops. That we do this my way, or not at all. She smiled. "That's why we're here." We signed the deal 2 weeks later. Prescott Development Group remained its own entity, independent but partnered. I got my own division, Oversight over design, hiring, materials, community planning. I hired Rob to manage logistics statewide. Kenny took lead over labor teams. I even brought in Ethan as junior planner. Gave him an office with a window. That first big strategy meeting, they booked a glass-walled conference room in Pine Brook's corporate tower. Funny, that was the same kind of room where Jenna once said I didn't belong. Now, I ran the meeting. No suits, just flannel, boots, and a folder labeled durability. First, someone from accounting asked if I'd like to see projections for market disruption potential. I just smiled. No need. Let's build what people need, not what trends say they want. And they listened, because now I wasn't the builder. They tried to control. I was the builder they needed to follow. I didn't lead with ego. I led with clarity. With scars that reminded me what happens when you hand the pen to people who only want the headline. This time I was writing every line, and I wasn't building houses anymore. I was building legacy. It wasn't planned. I hadn't thought much about that building since the day I dropped Jenna off for one of her meetings, back when I was still trying to be presentable enough to walk alongside her in public. The same glass tower where people once looked at my calloused hands like I didn't belong, but there I was again. 6 months later, same building, different entrance. I walked through the front doors of the Lexington Corporate Center, not as someone's +1, but as the new director of Pine Brook's regional division. A private elevator. My name on the meeting agenda. My boots leaving clean marks on their polished floor. No announcement. No dramatic return, just quiet steps. The receptionist greeted me politely, not realizing I was the guest of honor. She offered me water. I declined. I wasn't there for hospitality, I was there for direction. When I stepped into the conference room, a few heads turned. Half of them didn't recognize me. The other half did. Brent was one of them. He wasn't in a seat of power anymore. Just an advisor. Temporary, from what I'd heard. Leaned back, nervous fingers tapping a folder he wasn't supposed to. Open. We made eye contact. He looked away first. I sat at the head of the table. Opened my notes. Introduced my team. Not a single person in that room interrupted. They listened. Because I had something none of them could fabricate. Reputation. Earned. Not posted. After the meeting, I stayed behind for a moment. The building was mostly quiet. I walked past the corner where Jenna once took a photo of herself sipping coffee, pretending it was candid. I paused, not to mourn, but to absorb. That place, once a symbol of rejection, now echoed with my return. But not as revenge, not as a grand look-at-me-now spectacle, just presence. That was the real win. I didn't gloat. Didn't mention names. Didn't need applause. I was too busy leading. Funny thing about silence. The people who once doubted you hear it louder than any speech. I never set out to become a mentor, but somewhere along the line, between blueprint, revisions and sunrise meetings, I realized that people were watching. Not just clients or executives, the younger guys on the crew, the interns who came in not knowing the difference between a stud and a joist, the sons of old friends who said, "My dad told me you were the one to learn from." That hit different. So, I started something, a quiet little program we called Hands-On. No PR, no logos, just an open door for local teens who didn't fit into college brochures. I gave them gloves, tools, and a voice, taught them how to use a tape measure, how to estimate material costs, how to take pride in a job done right, even if no one ever noticed the angle of a perfect cut. We partnered with trade schools, sponsored gear, funded scholarships. Not because it made us look good, but because it felt right. Because I remembered what it was like to start with nothing but calluses and grit. And every now and then I'd catch a kid looking at a half-built frame the way I used to. Like it wasn't just wood and nails. It was a future. Elena helped expand the vision. She brought in design workshops, sustainability sessions, taught the art of building for generations, not just flipping for profit. We built homes that were smarter, cleaner, and human. And I'll be honest, I loved it. Not the spotlight, the impact. Watching someone lay their first tile and whisper, "I didn't think I could do this." They could, because we believed in them, before their resumes had anything to say. That's what legacy looks like. Not your name on a billboard, but your principles in someone else's hands. I used to think legacy was something people talked about at funerals, something carved in stone or printed in a bio no one actually read. But standing on the porch of the 10th home we built in the Claremont project, watching a young couple carry in a crib still wrapped in plastic, I realized legacy isn't something you leave behind. It's something you build into everything you touch. Funny thing about value, it doesn't shout. It doesn't beg to be seen. It just stays consistent, solid, unshaken, and over time, when the noise fades, when the filters fall off, value is the one thing still standing. Turns out I didn't need revenge. I just needed to keep building.